Hello, everyone. Welcome. We will get started with the webinar in just a minute or two. Hi, everyone, and welcome to our webinar, AI Smoke Detection in Action, a demonstration of AEM Elements 360. I'm Liz Marks, Director of Product Marketing here at AEM, and on behalf of everyone on the team, thank you so much for joining us today. Just a little housekeeping before we get started. This webinar is being recorded, and the recording will be available after the webinar is over. All attendees will be muted during the presentation, but we are eager to respond to your questions. If you have a question at any time during the presentation, please use the questions button to type them in the question box. We will review the posted questions during the Q&A session at the end of the webinar. After the webinar is over, we will be sending out a link to the recording and the presentation. If you have additional questions or want to learn more about AEM solutions, please feel free to contact us after the presentation. Before I introduce our speakers, I just wanted to talk a little bit about AEM. At AEM, our mission is to partner with communities and organizations globally to address the escalating challenges posed by extreme weather and natural hazards. Recognizing that these hazards don't begin and end at our administrative or government boundaries, we're focused on enhancing how organizations work together to prevent, prepare for, and recover from natural disasters. That's why we created the AEM Elements Resiliency Platform and the AEM Elements 360 Decision Support application. These solutions empower national, state, local, and commercial organizations to collectively plan and share valuable insights to build collaborative resilience. Using this approach, our customers make better decisions, reduce natural hazard risks, improve operational efficiency, save lives, and ultimately create safer and stronger communities. We are very excited to have an expert team with us today to share their knowledge of wildfire risk management and ignition detection technologies, as well as showcase the multi-source ignition detection capabilities in Elements 360. Ben Toomey is AEM's Global Segment Leader and Director of Product Management for Wildfire. Ben brings to AEM more than 2 decades of experience in leading the development of decision support solutions across a variety of industries, focusing on predictive analytics and applied simulation. He's been an active volunteer firefighter for more than a decade and continues to serve his community as a volunteer brigade officer and a senior fire behavior analyst for Queensland Fire and Emergency Services. Since 2015, he has been architecting and building advanced wildfire risk and predictive analytics systems with unique solutions to guide wildfire response, preparedness, and prevention decisions, both for Queensland Fire and Emergency Services and in the commercial sector. It's 3 a.m. for Ben, so we're really excited that he got up in the middle of the night to join us today. So welcome, Ben.
Thanks, Liz.
Mike Zukowski is an experienced and accomplished leader who brings a wealth of knowledge gained from more than 15 years in real-time environmental monitoring. As Director of Software Product Management at AEM, he is responsible for developing and driving the strategic vision for the development of the AEM Elements 360 application. Mike joined OneRain, an AEM brand, in 2007 as a field engineer and previously led the field services and software development teams as the general manager of OneRain. He holds a bachelor's degree in electrical engineering from Case Western Reserve University and an MBA from Colorado State. Welcome, Mike. Today, Ben will start us off talking a little bit about AEM's unique approach to wildfire resilience and the importance of having a unified, multidimensional view of wildfire risk. Then we'll turn it over to Mike to share a demonstration of our new multi-source ignition detection capabilities, including AI smoke detection in AEM Elements 360. finally, Ben will talk a little bit about some new features in the works here at AEM to help you elevate wildfire resilience through predictive insights. And then we will wrap it up with your questions. Before I hand the presentation over to Ben, we want to learn a little bit more about our audience so we can tailor our content so it's most relevant to you. So we have a poll question. All right, so our quick poll, what best describes your organization's current stage in implementing technology for wildfire detection? We are just starting to research available technologies. We're in the planning evaluating phase. We've begun implementing some technologies, or we are actively using technology but looking to expand. Just give everyone a minute to respond. All right, why don't we go ahead and close the poll and see what our results are. All right, so most people are really just getting started to research available technologies, which is really exciting to hear. So we're excited to share with you some of the things that we're doing at AEM. And for those of you that have already begun implementing or actively using some technology, we hope we can help you understand some of the new things that you might be needing or looking for your organization. All right, so now that we are, without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Ben.
Thanks, Liz. Gee, where to start? So thanks everybody for joining. Is where I'm going to start. I think we've got some people from various countries around the world, so it's very good to see you here. So leading into the discussion around multidimensional views of wildfire and where AEM is headed, to sort of set the scene for Mike's demo. After sort of 6 years at Queensland Fire, I did a lot of work in the community risk and resilience space, and worked with a lot of local governments, forestry, interstate fire agencies, and many others. And over that journey, one of the things that's become really clear to me is there's a lot of tech that's being developed, right? So lots of new things ranging from AI through to actual sort of fireground and suppression technologies and other things. In the IT space, in the software space, what's tending to happen a little bit is each one of these new brilliant pieces of technology is coming with its own platform. And this is causing many organizations to have to start sort of platform collecting in a way in order to access this capability, this fantastic capability in each of these bits of kit. So here at AEM, who already have kind of a plethora of capabilities spanning, severe weather and environmental monitoring. We've got a global lightning network and a whole bunch of different things. For me, the sort of driving question became, well, how do we simplify this? How do we create an environment where, local governments and others don't have to collect platforms and have a full IT procurement, staff training process, everything every time? And so as a result, particularly in the ignition detection space, we've sort of come up with this approach whereby we want to be able to integrate any new ignition detection source relatively quickly without destabilizing your business. So having to go through all of the stuff, overhead of training and the IT implementation and everything else. So the idea is you kind of, you integrate that beforehand and the software platform largely stays the same, but you get to capitalize on that new technology. So the idea is to sort of future-proof the introduction of new ignition detection technologies, because who knows what's going to be around the corner. So Michael will explain a little bit more about this as he shows you the demo, but we'll have a ignition detection events API, and we'll be able to connect new bits of kit to Elements relatively quickly. So looking at this as a kind of a integration problem, if you like, or a sensor fusion problem. And so the idea is to underpin this concept of collaboration as well. And so not only do we want to future-proof the way we do ignition detection and sort of take a step back from the rush of technology and say, this isn't just a camera-based ignition detection problem, or it's not a air quality-based ignition detection problem. This is just an ignition detection problem. And we need to be able to position the software to be able to connect to any of those providers. And underpinning all of that, do it in a framework that lets us collaborate with those around us who share the wildfire problem. So wildfire doesn't obey boundaries. It's a landscape fuels-driven phenomenon. And so if we share, landscapes, we share the risk. So we want to sort of figure out how to better integrate this and overcome this sort of fragmented data issue. So I'm an ex-military guy. I like to think about things in the terms that I was trained in. And one of those things in terms of defence is defence in depth. And so there's no one sort of single ignition detection solution that's going to solve all your problems usually. It's a challenging space. And there's a range of things that you can see on the screen here, going from fire weather sensors, all the way up to space-based assets, air quality. There's potentially even things in the electrical industry that can detect arcing and other potential sources of ignition. So there's a spectrum of different capabilities. And so this sort of multi-dimensional approach for us is really important, and how you bring them all together. And we believe that having this defence in depth type arrangement for ignition detection is really important. So what's that's led us to is this kind of layered approach. So across the resilience spectrum, we want to provide the ability to not just capitalise on AEM's extant, usual environmental monitoring capability. So, weather stations, air quality sensors, total lightning network, Ncast, hyper accurate sort of local AI supported weather forecasting around those stations, flood gauges. There's a whole massive list of stuff that AEM does. But we wanted to be able to superimpose the ignition detection capabilities around that. And I'm about to hand over to Mike to show you exactly what that looks like. And then I'll come back towards the end of the session and just talk a little bit about what we're going to be putting on the back end of this downstream. So we've got some exciting news around wildfire simulation and forecasting capabilities, a global data pipeline that's going to let us do things anywhere on the planet. So with that, I'll stop talking about the theory now, and I'll hand over to Mike to actually show you through what the demonstration looks like.
Hey, great, thanks, Ben. Hopefully my screen is coming up now. Ben, I can see you, so maybe you can give me a thumbs up if you're seeing the map there. All right, great. So as Ben mentioned, he talked a little bit about kind of the building blocks that help provide inputs towards a multi-source integration system. So my plan today is to walk through that. So before we get into ignition events, I want to start off first at that basic building block, which was surface observations. So as we see on the map here, and as we saw in the diagram, that's really the basic building block for kind of understanding current conditions and hopefully some potential risk. And it's a lot of what people on this call and a lot of users and administrators and managers in the wildfire space have seen and have a good understanding of. So I just wanted to start with that because Elements 360, we provide a unified view of environmental data. We can bring in almost any source, turn that data into customizable maps, charts, dashboards, analytics. And that really starts being able to ingest from lots of sources. So I'm just going to click around a little bit, maybe on a few parameters that I know we would care about if we were, in a situation around wildfire. So for this, for the webinar, I'm going to be focusing on the Coconino National Forest. This is in Arizona, which is in the Southwest United States. I will say that the technologies and the services that we're building out, we're looking at everything at a global scale. but I'm just using this as a way to focus a particular location in the webinar that we kind of have lots of tools with. So what we're seeing here is really a collection of surface observations. This includes RAW stations that are transmitting via GOES and leveraging AEM's HRIT receivers so that we can get that data directly. METAR data, data from our own AEM's global network of weather stations. And then we also support hardware deployed by local agencies who need observations at specific locations, or maybe you have a need for a quick deploy if you are actually fighting a fire. We can bring all that data in. We've been built to be flexible as the primary requirement for data, and we know that different industries, specifically wildfire, have different needs around that data. So I just want to mention that. Again, it's kind of that first building block of what we're thinking about. What can we use as inputs to understand what's really happening in our environment better? The other item I wanted to highlight, and I just have one of them set up here, is the ability to do equations, provide functions, do calculations. So I'm using this for an example of calculating a fire weather indices. So we can take that kind of standard data that's included in RAW stations, turn that into a fire weather index. Again, it just kind of gives you that baseline understanding of potential risk in the world. So the next item, I'm going to switch this back just so maybe it's not distracting with the red on there. The next item kind of in that building block that I want to talk about is lightning. So in addition to surface observations, such as RAW stations, AEM's total lightning network provides real-time data that allows you to quickly evaluate the risk posed by extreme weather. So I'm just going to show it here, again, just kind of on the map. Again, it's a global network, so I'm just going to kind of zoom out a little bit, and I believe we have a little bit of lightning here in the United States where I'm based. But again, it's the next building block in the system. So not only can we visualize in the area that matters to us, but we can also create alerts to increase awareness if conditions are ripe for an ignition, if there is lightning in the area. So we visualize the lightning. This is current, this is kind of real time. But I just want to highlight as well, we do have the ability to go back and look at archival data. So if there is an area that you're interested in, maybe you did have an ignition that happened a week ago or something like that, we can go back and look at that. So go ahead and just bring that up just so we have something to kind of look at and show that, yeah, we are doing, bringing this data in, we are able to visualize it as well. And again, this will be important, again, once we start about how we're bringing this all together and fusing this data together. So I brought up from August 1st of this year in this area, and this will come up again later when we start talking about specific events that are potentially happening here. The next item I want to talk about, and Ben kind of touched on it too, again, just kind of working off of those building blocks, is leveraging satellite data. So we're ingesting the satellite data from the VIIRS and the MODIS instruments. So again, it just provides us that additional context that we might need when we're understanding, is there a real fire? It increases the confidence. So if you do have something like a camera or air quality sensors that are picking up the signatures that yes, there could be an ignition in this area, we can leverage this data that we're aggregating into the platform to really improve the confidence and ensure that when you are sending resources somewhere, you've got the data to back up that, yeah, we do need to go take a look at this. Again, it's all about getting the better picture of the conditions on the ground when a potential event is occurring. And then on the map as well, I wanted to highlight, we built a tool to be able to ingest and visualize other data sources as well. Since we're talking about wildfire, I've got set up some of the NIFC layers so that I can see what are the current events happening across the US. For our friends up in Canada who are struggling and maybe not struggling, but dealing with lots of wildfire activity recently, being able to integrate with Natural Resources Canada to be able to bring that data in, again, to give that additional understanding of what's going on in the world. Same thing on the risk side. You know, they're calculating a nationwide global fire index. We can bring that in, visualize it, again, give you that context in addition to the surface observations and the lightning data. So the next piece to really discuss around this, and we're gonna look at a few items, is cameras. So we're all aware it's gained a lot of popularity in the recent years. They're a great way to enhance situational awareness, provide additional data points for decision making. And I want to talk a little bit about, in the wildfire space, our Smart GT technology. It's a very unique tool. And I'm going to bring it up here. My internet's been a little slow today, so hopefully this will load. We're loading a couple hundred images quickly here. But the idea behind our Smart GT technology is with one camera, we can collect and display images together and have them separated by the directionality or the azimuth of the camera. It allows us to interpret it as a human. I don't have to watch a time lapse of images kind of streaming by that are moving to different directions. And we can kind of turn on here. This is the camera actually near where I live in Colorado, so it's a beautiful day here. We can add points of interest. So if we do have an ignition, or we have a potential for ignition, or potentially we have a prescribed burn that we want to keep an eye on, remotely through the software, we can go in and we can add a point of interest easily just by clicking a button, giving it a name, saying, hey, I'd like to see this and watch this for the next 2 days. And the camera will automatically start moving to that location and at that zoom level that you prescribed to keep an eye on whatever area that you have interest in. And then we also want to be able to take control, and we enable that in the UI as well, of the camera itself. So if it is a pan and zoom camera, such as this camera, we can click on the live stream button, bring up the interface, and take control of the camera. I'm not going to do that because this is a production operational camera, but just want to let everybody know that that functionality does exist. We can take that, if we do need to move the camera to a specific zoom or specific location to keep an eye on a fire, we're trying to make that nice and easy for you, again, through one application that Ben kind of talked about. So when I'm thinking about the cameras, we really want to think about how do we take that to the next level. We had humans up in watchtowers, keeping an eye on the landscape for a long time. The next step was getting cameras in, but you have to have a person in front of the screen watching these images, looking for smoke, looking for those signatures of a wildfire. But the next iteration of that is leveraging AI to look for those smoke signatures in the images and automatically alert us when there is an event. And then we can, again, use all of our tools to help confirm that, take it to the next level if we need to get firefighters out there, get someone to acknowledge the event. And so our goal with Elements 360 and this multi-source ignition detection framework is really to pull all this data together. And I know I went through it pretty fast, but what we're trying to do is bring all this data together to increase our confidence around potential ignitions and to support the decision makers when minutes matter. By fusing that lightning network, our ability to leverage and aggregate all of the hotspots from different satellite sensors, bringing in air quality sensors, and leveraging the smoke AI capabilities, we're really providing a more complete view of a potential wildfire and hopefully allowing you to act with confidence. And then the other piece of that, as Ben mentioned, the approach we're taking with all of this, it's going to allow us to add additional sources, new technologies for integration, for comparison, for triggering events. We've built a standard API so we can leverage partners and again, new technologies without requiring a lot of coding, without requiring a lot of additional resources on either end, especially ourselves. Then we can quickly deliver and come to market as these new technologies are evolving. There's new ideas, new things happening every day. So instead of trying to predict the future, we're trying to build a tool that will allow us to support whatever happens in the future. So with that, I'm going to kind of walk through, take some time to step through the system and hopefully show some ignition events and kind of show what the UI looks like today. And then we'll turn it back over for Ben so he can talk a little bit about where we're going in the future as well. So with that, I'm going to kind of step through the creation of watch points and how we're going to work with them. So I'm going to go to the administration. And so for this webinar, we're focusing on the smoke AI ignition events. And so once we have our cameras deployed, they're going to be registered with our AI services. And then each image is checked for potential wildfire. But before we do that, and how we want to do that is we need to create what we call a watch point or a watch area. So I'm going to go ahead and just create one so we can kind of see that. I'm just going to name it, it's near Boise is the area I've chosen today. I'm just going to call it Boise as well. And so we care about specific locations when we're thinking about assets. Maybe we're thinking about population centers that we want to keep an eye on. So we kind of showed we had surface observations and we can bring all of that data in. And that's really a defined location. But with fire and wildfire ignitions, we now need to provide the ability to create a polygon, which we're calling a watch point in Elements 360. And we've created a tool to help define the boundaries using a map. And I just want to mention too, if you have a GIS team and have feature collections for maybe the area of interest that you have, we can easily bring that in as well. You just copy and paste it over. But just to show real quick, and we're actually going to go ahead and create a watch point and get it registered. We have a nice map here where we can do a box, circles, squares, but I'm just going to use a polygon in this case. And I'm just going to draw a general area kind of around Boise, just so we have a little bit of data to work with here in a second, and hopefully maybe trigger an event to see what that looks like. So again, I just kind of drew the polygon. I happened to draw a kind of a square, but as you'll see in a second with some of the other watch points I've drawn, they can be a lot more complex than this. So I've saved that off. I've got it. I'm gonna use a few toggles here and add it to my watch point list. And then I hit save. So now my watch point's created. You can see I don't have any events here, but what's happening behind the scenes is now we're registering this watch point in that area that I defined with our ignition events service. So very straightforward, very easy to add. Again, you can draw it through the UI, or you can leverage GIS tools that you already have as well for this. So I'm going to go back to the map now. And again, so once we have the watch points registered, and once we have our cameras deployed and they're registered with the AI service for the smoke detection, they do start checking for potential wildfires. So I'm going to go back to the map, and we're going to look at that Coconino area again. And I'm bringing this one up. So I did create that watch point, and we'll see it up near Boise there. But for now, I'm going to actually kind of focus down here in the Coconino area. We've got some existing cameras and things like that there that we can leverage to kind of show what the system would look like in an active event. So as you can see, hopefully you can see across the web share, I've actually defined 3 watch points here, and those correspond with districts that are part of the national forest there. It's a fairly large area, and so by breaking it up, the watch points, we can define alerts that may be specific to each district. Also allows people to keep an eye on maybe a district or an area that they're specifically responsible for. So as you can see here, there's an existing event in the watch point already, and that's what that red flame icon represents here. We do allow the users and administrators of the system to define their own icons and things like that in case ours don't work out for you, or if you've got an existing tool or something like that that you want to leverage a specific icon for, we can support that. And then looking at the legend at the left, this one may be a little hard to come across on the webinar, but it's an active event that hasn't been acknowledged yet. You can see there's a couple of states, and I'm going to move to the layer here just to kind of show some filters. We have events can be active and clear, they can be acknowledged and unacknowledged. I'm not going to walk through the whole UI on that piece today, but just to let everyone know, we do kind of walk through that. So once an event is detected, it is in an active state, and then a user of the software can then acknowledge the event, and then once it's cleared, they can confirm that it's cleared and mark that out as well. And again, we can kind of filter those events and acknowledgements to show exactly what we need to see on the map as we're kind of investigating or reviewing what happened. So the other component of this as well is out of the box, we're showing the last 30 days of activity. We can go in the archive and look back. So maybe I'm interested in events that happened since June 1st through now. And you can see I did get another event up here, which has been cleared and has been acknowledged as well. So I'm going to focus on this event really quick. So when I click on it, I get more information about it, the district it's in, whether it's been acknowledged, when it actually happened, etc. So this is the ignition source type is actually from a camera. So this was actually triggered by our smoke AI systems. And you can see here we're visualizing and showing the image that we actually did detect it on. So probably hard to see, but there is a red box here around that smoke signature that we did pick up. And in lieu of trying to open this up right now, you can download it quickly just by clicking on it. I'm gonna show it in hopefully in a video here in a second as well, so we can kind of see how those interactions work. So again, we picked up the events, but what we really care about and what we're trying to do with our multi-source ignition is really try to understand what other conditions existed at the time. So I'm going to go ahead and turn that on really quick. So we can see that when this happened, this one is from about a week or so ago, there was a lot of lightning in the area. So you can kind of see it within our watch point here and just outside of it. We're visualizing and showing what the conditions were. In this case, lots of lightning. I don't see any hotspots in here, but those would show up as separate icons. And then any of the other sources that we're able to integrate and bring in, we'll be able to check for those signatures as well and include them with our events. So again, just kind of increasing confidence that, you know, there was a lot of lightning in this area, conditions were ripe for a potential spark, and we did get an event and see that event through that smoke AI detection. So let's look at the cameras really quick. So again, just bringing in additional information that we can come across here. We can see we've got a number of cameras in the location. We've got a couple of icons here. And then I'm gonna pick this camera. I think this is actually the one that picked it up. We can see here we have the latest image. And then we can, if this was an actual event, you know, it's really nice to have that latest image here, but maybe I need to go back and look at some times in the past. If I click live, it's going to bring it up to my list of cameras and visualize all of that information. Running a little slow today, but we can see we have this camera. This camera is not a camera enabled for that smart GT type system. So it's a camera that points in one direction. And then you can see here, we bring up the latest image. We can autoplay it so we can kind of see a time lapse of what's going on. Again, really good to understand what's going on, because sometimes these AI smoke signatures, which we'll see in a second, they can be a little hard to recognize maybe just from one image. So have that ability. If it's something we want to save off, we can save it off in our storage plan. And then one thing I want to highlight is the ability in the vault to store off of these. So I mentioned that detection was from August 1st. So I just want to show the video. And again, just kind of show the power of the AI. And keep an eye, hopefully you guys can see my cursor, but on the right side of the video here, we can start to see the smoke rise up. This is pretty far away. Ben, you may remember exactly how far away it was, but the AI system, we were very, very impressed that it could pick up this smoke signature that's out there on the far horizon, barely coming up and maybe not even going above the horizon that's further out. But again, really, really powerful way to leverage a camera, and pretty amazing ability that we were able to pick up the signature here as well. Some other information around all of this as well is that we can see, if we look through our sites, we've got our observational data, but we can also look at our data around maybe one of the districts, maybe that was the right one, maybe I'll click the Red Rock districts. We can see we've got events and we can get more information. And as we get more information about the events, we can bring that data in and visualize it all. Again, keeping that historical record, keeping some legacy records around so that you know exactly what happened. And then, you know, season over season for comparison over time will be great as well. So the last thing I kind of want to touch on is alerting. So for all of the watch points that we created, you can enable alerts that ensure you receive notifications when an event does occur. So again, if we're leveraging all of this automated tools to do comparisons, we're bringing in those images, we're running them through AI. When something happens, that's when you need to know about it. That's when you can come in and actually leverage the tools and leverage the UI. But it gives you that quick notification you find out very quickly that there's a potential ignition event. You can leverage the other tools, is there lighting in the area, et cetera, to again improve confidence around all of that. So with that, what I'm actually going to try and do is submit an event if I can. I'm not sure if it's going to work or not because I've had my stuff open for a bit, but we'll see if we actually triggered an event. I'm going to go back up to that Boise area. Let's see, no events. So, but what we've enabled is that the API, we are capable of running an event through the API quickly and to trigger these events. And actually these events were triggered through our API already, including the one I showed before, which was manually configured and triggered. And with that, Ben, I think I'll turn it over to you and see, unless there's any questions here, and then we can, if there are or not, we can answer them, and otherwise we can talk about kind of where we're going with this in the future.
Thanks, Mike. That was really cool. Yeah, sorry, hopefully my microphone sounds a bit better now. I saw some of the questions there saying my microphone was a bit lousy. So hopefully things have improved. So awesome demo. Thanks very much, Mike. I wanted to just sort of touch on the whole kind of approach here. So sort of recap it. So if you're looking to solve or at least, help on your ignition detection capability, so the idea with this again is that, it's not just cameras, it's not just our fantastic partners in N5 Sensors with their air quality capability with AI that detects and effectively smells an ignition. It can be any other ignition detection technology that we can integrate into this capability, and then everything downstream, including the alerting, notification engine, etc., just works. Okay, so plug it in and everything else just works. So the idea is that one of those solutions isn't going to solve all your problems. So there's going to be certain places where cameras can't see, or they're not entirely suited to the particular surroundings or conditions or terrain or whatever it happens to be. So the idea is that we create a suited network of sensor combinations and even third-party tech, like I said, that we haven't thought of yet, in such a way that we bring it together with the rest of the AEM capabilities. Mike showed really clearly the value of the total lightning database and cross-checking with the lightning database. To touch a little bit on where we're headed in the future in regards to that, we are currently undertaking a global wildfire data pipeline construction effort at the moment. So the idea here is that for specific domains like North America or Australia or wherever we happen to be, we can leverage the best available fuel data that we've got in those locations and superimpose it on what would be a very good globally generic fuel capability. And on top of which we can then sit a fire spread prediction capability, which we've now acquired. We have a fire spread simulation model that is operational here in Australia, scalable globally based on that data pipeline that I talked about, with the eventual goal of being able to add more to the ignition notification process here. So downstream, think 12, 18 months, you're not just going to get an ignition notification that tells you, hey, the cameras have detected this, or our N5 sensors have detected this, and we've got lightning in the area, and we can see some hotspots, so our confidence is high that there's a genuine ignition. Under certain threshold conditions, the rule sets you can establish will automatically trigger a 12-hour fire spread prediction from the reported ignition location, so that you can start to automatically see very quickly the development potential. So this is not intended to be an operational quality prediction. It is meant to be a use of the latest capability and the best available data to give you an idea of fire development under those conditions with the best available data that we've got. So that's to come. And I guess with that, I think I don't have much more to say. I think we might be a little bit over time, but hopefully I've answered most of your questions. I've been trying to get to them in the questions panel there. I will continue to have a go at that as we finish off the webinar. But with that, I'll say thank you and take any questions.
All right, okay. Ben, you were getting ahead of me. I was trying to, with the questions, so I want to make sure we ask them again. So I apologize if we have you repeat.
Sorry,
So
Liz.
everyone, no, it's okay. So everyone can hear. We did have a couple of great questions come up in the chat. And I think Ben's already talked a little bit about, we had a question about integrating those third-party solutions. So we already talked a little bit about that just now, but there was a question about how is our camera solution different from others in the market?
Yep. Sorry about that, Liz. Just let me
That's
find
okay.
finding the. Here we go. Okay. So the camera solution, so it's just a part of the broader ignition detection solution. So that's the first point. So firstly, to differentiate ourselves, it's not just cameras. Cameras are really important. AI is really important, but that's not the differentiation factor here. The differentiation factor is that it's cameras plus N5 sensors plus whatever third-party tech is needed, all in the one place. And so as far as cameras go, I would hope that what you saw in Mike's demo, you know, that's a typical challenging daytime long-range smoke detection from the AI. And so with the false positive rate of, you know, daytime false positive rate of around about 0.5%, which we then have human in the loop verify imagery before it gets activated as a final event as well. So there's several layers to ensure the camera solution, particularly in the AI, is performing as best as it possibly can.
We had a couple other questions related to the AI smoke. How do you deal with events of heat exchange where cold atmosphere blocks the smoke?
Yeah, so I think that was Robert. Yeah, so good question. So I tried to say that the AI can only report on what it can see. So if at long range you've got a low radiation inversion and the smoke is simply not being able to be seen by the camera, so it's not appearing in the image, then the camera is not going to see it. But again, this is a great question for highlighting why you need multiple detection sources. And so in the case of cameras and the AI not being able to detect it, that's why you're going to want to have potentially N5 sensors deployed so they can smell it. They don't care whether it's night or day or whether there's inversions or not inversions. If that smoke and the particulate change happens across one of those sensors, it'll trigger it. It's why downstream we may want to integrate satellite-based ignition detection companies that are starting to put into low Earth orbit high revisit rate CubeSats that are detecting thermal changes with each pass. So there's a potential swathe of new technologies that we build up as I guess a sort of a mosaic of capability that'll get us to the right answer in the shortest amount of time.
And then I think this is a nice follow-on is what about identifying the smoke at night?
Yeah, nighttime is always a challenge, and you know, the reason for that is that, you know, particularly for cameras, the AI, it's an image detection capability, and so the way AI works is you need to train it on a bunch of images that have fire developing at night, potentially proximal to you know, the wildfire urban interface where you've got light pollution. So there'll be cars moving back and forth with lights on them and other things. And so it can be quite challenging for the AI. So it doesn't generally perform as well at night, particularly on the edges of towns and things where there's light pollution as well as it does during the day. That said, it's not catastrophically bad by any stretch. And having a human in the loop to look at each of those sort of limits the false positives that end up you know, with the customer trying to deal with something. But again, it's that's exactly the reason why you need multi-sources. That's, you know, something that's going to do a better job and isn't distracted by light pollution at night and isn't distracted by the fact that it's dark and it's going to be difficult to see smoke. So having those different sorts of detection technologies is really critical.
We have a question here about layering in Elements 360, the power lines or other infrastructure that creates risk, sorry.
I'll let you tackle that one, Mike, if that's all right.
Yeah, so yes is generally the answer there. We've integrated in a number of things like transmission lines and things like that, as long as they're available in a a source that's consumable. And we pretty much support, at least on the map visualization side, pretty much every OGC standard. So if you have like an Esri system or something like that, we can almost always integrate with it. Or if you're running a GeoServer, running WMS or anything like that. And then the other thing I'd like to highlight too is since we have the ability to do polygons for these watch points and watch areas, you can actually define those polygons along transmission line areas as well to kind of narrow down the locations that you care about as well. And we've got some interesting things that we've been talking about around specifically transmissions and power lines as well. So I suspect we'll have more functionality around that hopefully very soon. Yeah. Ben, I don't know if you've got anything else to add around that.
Yeah, no, it's a good lead in for me, Mike. What I was going to say is that in addition to the simulation stuff that I talked about and the ability to be able to provide reasonable quality fire spread and fire behavior prediction on the back of this stuff anywhere on the planet, the concept of collaborative resilience is really important to me. So something I've tried to really push at AEM is this notion that you all as customer organisations, above all, it helps to talk to your neighbours because we share this risk and we share these problems. And so the ability to define assets or values inside the system is coming. So in an explicit way that we can use in terms of automated risk. And so think when you get an ignition detection downstream with the automated spread prediction, those assets and power network blocks that you've defined in the platform will automatically be listed as potentially in the impact area within that 12-hour period or however long we set. And so, yes, the answer is yes, we can bring those assets in, as Mike mentioned, but it's more than that. These things are going to be used actively in terms of risk assessment and our notifications capability.
Okay, we've got a couple questions here about RAWs for calculations and APIs. So how do you handle initialization of RAWs for calculations each year? That's with the fire weather index.
Yeah, I'll take that one, Liz. Yeah, so for those not aware, when you're doing the fire weather calculation, there's kind of startup codes is the term that I'm most familiar with that you use to initialize the calculations, typically done at the start of the year, then they kind of influence the daily calculations that are kind of happening each day moving forward from there. So we have built tools to insert that data, for lack of a better word, into the parameters. So the answer is yes, we do handle that. We do allow you to configure and put those startup codes in, and we actually have tools where if you need it to be March 14th, there's when it started. And it's already April, you can actually insert that data in for March 14th and run a tool that will recalculate everything from that point up until now, and then use the new values going forward. So yes, we are familiar with those, and we do have tools to help with that configuration.
And I'm not an API expert, so I'm not sure about this question, but does the API require tokens to access data?
Yeah, that's a more complicated question, API in general, because there's a number of different APIs and things like that. So it'd probably be a question discussed offline about that. But yeah, it does require tokens and authentication and all of that kind of stuff. Yeah.
And then here's, I think, is an easy one. Is the lightning data forecast or just current conditions?
So it is current conditions. The one thing I will say though around the forecast is we do have a tool called dangerous thunderstorm alerts, which actually use the lightning activity in the area to generate a polygon that's kind of forward-looking based on the track of the storm. So we do have tools that identify areas that could be within risk over the next, I think it's up to 60 minutes. I can't remember off the top of my head, but so there is a forecast component, 45 minutes, I think you said. There is a forecast component with lightning when there is heavy activity in an area. we do provide some forecast warning. It actually happened to me yesterday where I live. There was a lot of lightning and severe weather, and it correctly calculated it that we were going to get hit. So I can confirm that it works from anecdotal, but from yesterday.
And we can set up, with lightning, we can set up alerts based on distance from a certain location as well, right? So
Correct.
You want to know when lightning is 60 minutes or miles away or 30 miles away or 10 miles away, we do have the ability to do that as well. So
that's correct, yeah.
And then there was a question about how you determined the location of the fire in the example that you showed, Mike. Was that one camera?
It was from one camera. I'll probably defer to Ben. He's a little more eloquent around this component, and so I think I'll defer to Ben on it.
Yeah, no worries. So at the moment, for one camera detections, it's basically using image geometry. So we know the direction of bearing for the center of the image that the camera is reporting, and we know the resolution of that image, so the field of view, et cetera, et cetera. So you can determine the detection box location relative to what you know about the camera's geometry. So as you can imagine though, the further you get towards the horizon, the bigger the error bars get down the line of bearing, because it gets tougher, if you like, to get those sort of angles really, finely tuned at that sort of distance. That said, for cameras where you've got, or networks where you've got multiple cameras detecting a fire, we will be triangulating as well. So that will significantly reduce the error detection radius, if you like, or the location radius when we report those locations.
Yeah, and Ben, I'll just add on to that too, that it has been stated, a lot of times we know kind of what our general error is, our potential error is around that. And I didn't zoom in far enough on it during the demo, but we do visualize kind of that polygon of the potential of where it is. So we will show the icon kind of in the centroid of that polygon, but we do visualize and show, if we've got the information, what the area, what that area potentially is, that error potentially is on the map. So from a visualization perspective, we're accounting for that as well, or trying to at least.
All right, so we've got a question about GEO and LEO satellites. How do you see the role of GEO, and LEO satellites, optical as well as thermal sensors, and their integration with ground cameras?
All right, I guess I'll have a crack at that one. So geostationary and low Earth orbit satellites. So how I see those, excuse me, those sensors particularly, I think, hold great promise, particularly the LEO, the low Earth orbit one. So lower cost, lots of them up there. So if you've got a suitably dense network of low Earth orbit satellites, as some of you who use Starlink like I do, when you've got lots of them up there, you get really good coverage and really high revisit rates. The challenge, of course, being small and cheap, is the instruments themselves can be a bit less resolved, and there's some challenges there, but it's getting better all the time. So specifically to answer your question, I see in the future, once those networks become sufficiently dense and the instruments sufficiently resolved, they're going to become a very important detection source. Again, not a complete solution. There'll be cloud occlusion and all sorts of other potential issues with satellites. So again, the multi sort of source approach is going to be really important. Do I see them being integrated into here? Absolutely. And we look forward to when we can. There's a new GOES detection capability that's sort of down to 1 acre type resolution that's coming online. It's almost a real time over North America, figuring out when fires are being detected. It's experimental at the moment. Once that feed becomes available, we'll definitely be looking at bringing that in as well.
We have a question about how the AI model was trained. How big is the data set for the AI smoke?
Roughly about 26.5 million, sorry, I want to make sure I'm correct here. Sorry, no, it's not. It's 11.5 million daytime images of which 26,500 had smoke in them. So the training data set is that large for daytime detections. I don't have the stats off the top of my head for the night model.
Okay. Does the lightning layer show actual lightning strikes on the ground or just lightning activity?
Yeah, I think that one's for
Just
me.
cloud to ground.
Yeah, it's cloud to ground. So on the when I showed it during the demonstration, I did have both. Inner cloud lightning was shown as well as cloud to ground, but we're filtering on cloud to ground strikes as part of the ignition detection set.
This may be a little bit more of a hardware question, but how do you deal with an internet network coverage if it's needed? We have huge remote areas without network coverage.
So it depends which hardware you're looking at. So for like surface observations, satellite-based works just fine. We do have a few cameras that have been put out on satellite as well that are private, pay-as-you-go kind of services in order to do that. Now power starts becoming an issue, bandwidth starts becoming an issue, specifically around the cost. So most of our cameras are set up to take images, multiple images per minute. In those scenarios, that's typically not cost effective to do. So you may only be sending an image once an hour or something around that. So there are some tools available to do that. It's typically comes down to, what are you willing to spend to get that data out? And other components, VHF, et cetera, radios or lower RAN radios may work in those cases, but it often comes down to a case-by-case basis for getting that data out.
And then we have a question here, probably for you, Mike. Is this application run on-prem server or in the cloud?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So the Elements 360 application itself can run either. We can host it in a multi-tenant instance. You can have a dedicated instance, or it can be run on-prem or within, your own IT infrastructure. For the visualization components, currently right now, the multi-source ignition, it runs in the cloud. So we just need access to the APIs in the cloud. So the events API are amalgamation of the different data sources, the hotspots, lighting, and things like that. And all of that data is all being centralized in a cloud location. But there is kind of a split where the visualization platform can be run locally. And I could see an example of that if you had surface observations or something like that, and you wanted to store all of that locally, but still leverage the service for some of the events and ignition detection, that would be possible. But generally, kind of the hard working parts of this service is cloud-based. So I hope that answered that question. It's one of those, it's complicated kind of situations.
And then we had one last question, which was how do I get the software? And so I can probably answer that one, and we'll provide we'll share information after, but you can reach out to us at info@aem.eco, and we will have someone on our sales team reach out to you to learn more about the software and how we can help you. And that was all the questions. So so thank you, Ben and Mike, first for sharing all the information today. It was a great demo, and I think a lot of people had a lot of great questions, and hopefully we'll continue to ask them either through reaching out to you directly or reaching out to us through info@aem.eco. If you are interested in learning more about AEM's vision for wildfire resilience, please do visit our interactive site where you can explore the full scope of wildfire risk management. You can see examples of collaborative wildfire resilience in action, and also assess your capabilities as a wildfire readiness leader. Just a quick reminder that we will be sending out a link to the recording and presentation to all of the registrants. And thank you again to Ben and Mike, and thank you everyone who attended for joining us today. Have a great day.
Thanks, everybody.